Ironically, the hottest name in the fight game, Jake Paul, has dropped yet another bomb that has dented the internet. The problem child is set to change his focus from the ring to the octagon. That's right, Jake Paul has just announced his multi-fight contract with the MMA promotion PFL. And what's that? He wants to fight who for his first time? In today's video, we'll dive into all the details. First up, Jake Paul signs with the PFL. After maintaining his undefeated boxing run after winning against the likes of MMA stars Anderson Silva, Tyron Woodley, and Ben Askren, Jake looks to test new waters, this time on their own soil. That's right, the problem child has officially announced his entry into the octagon in his most recent YouTube video, where he's announced a contract with the Professional Fighters League. The YouTuber turned pugilist will be fighting in an entirely new division called Super Fight, with events showcased on pay-per-view. Paul announced his deal with the promotion in an interview with the New York Times on Thursday, claiming he wanted to change the MMA and wanted to create a successive big league. What's more, Jake further said that he has been disrupting boxing and looks to do the same on MMA soil. PFL chairman Don Davis has told ESPN that there is no time frame set on when Jake would make his first appearance as an MMA fighter, saying that he can wait till next year. Don Davis acknowledged Jake's appeal to fans, saying he doesn't underestimate the fight game. Now, say what you will about the Ohio-born superstar, he has given the sport of boxing the respect it deserves, taking his training and discipline very seriously. Though, what's interesting is how the PFL boss hyped up Jake's potential opponent, saying that it would shock the world in terms of how big a name they are. But who is this mystery fighter? Coming up, Nate Diaz has entered the chat. Straight out of Stockton, the baddest fighter on the planet, Nate Diaz, is on the top of Jake Paul's list to kickstart his official MMA career. Yep, this is not a drill. Paul offered Nate an official 2-fight deal where he would first face him in the ring and transition over to Nate's domain in the octagon in the second one, after a 6-month gap. The 25-year-old has made his move, and the stipulation is just too good to be true. If there's one thing to take away from Jake Paul's prowess as a fighter, he sure does know what the public wants. The fight on paper, as unorthodox as it is, just makes sense. Jake and Nate have not been strangers to each other in the past. Apparently, Nate stirred up some friction with the Paul camp before exiting the area during the Anderson Silva fights. Not to mention, Jake openly called Nate out after the fight, saying he's willing to settle differences in the ring. We are yet to hear a substantial reply from Nate himself. The two fighters complemented each other's persona perfectly. Both know how to get under their opponent's skin and talk trash. Jake has proven he can hold his own against the greats in the business after beating Tyron Woodley twice alongside Anderson Silva. It only makes sense that the next big name he faces is up there among your Conor McGregors and Nate Diaz. Jake may very well be the underdog here, but in popularity and buzz, he's up among the greats. Moving on to Nate Diaz may be looking elsewhere. With everything said and done, the offer is up, and Jake Paul's camp is waiting for Nate's response, and so are we as fans. But are we getting too ahead of ourselves here? Apparently, Nate Diaz has teased other plans after receiving Jake's multi-fight deal. The UFC veteran posted an image of the Japanese MMA promotion Rizin on his Twitter. The Independent has since then reached out to Rizin for details on why he did it. Previously, there were rumors of Nate Diaz thinking of jumping ship to UFC rivals Bellator, who also hosted an event with Rizin where he saw fighters competing in cross-promotion speculation. If this does turn out to be accurate, the chances of Nate Diaz facing Jake Paul look rather slim. Diaz tied up his story with the UFC back in September of 2022, after his contract expired. Even though the 37-year-old may not be in his prime, he still has a few significant fights up his sleeves. Like, he is still revered among the greats in MMA alongside his brother Nick, and will be on every promotion's list to get his signature. UFC starlet Jorge Masvidal went candid, speaking on Nate's decision to leave the UFC, claiming he wasn't fit for the big leagues in the business, and was on the cusp of some severe brain damage. It may be more innovative for Nate to square up against a lesser experienced fighter such as Jake compared to the sharks on the prowl for him in Bellator. Which begs the question, is Jake Paul good for MMA? Even though Jake has been criticized by many fans of both MMA and boxing, it is safe to say he has done wonders for the fighting sport overall. Jake started off as a YouTuber alongside his brother Logan Paul, who has had his fair share of experience in the ring against the likes of a bitter rival KSI, and an exhibition match with Floyd Money Mayweather. That being said, unlike his brother, Jake has taken the sport much more seriously and successfully migrated his YouTube audience over to watch him put on the gloves. The end result? More pay-per-view buys and more popularity brought to the sport. Oh, and it doesn't end there. Jake has avidly blown the whistle against Dana White's controversial antics of underpaying his fighters. It's no surprise that the UFC has a big pay problem, with numerous fighters coming out and venting their frustrations with how they are treated for putting their lives on the line. Jake wishes to end the fighter pay gap with his endeavors in the PFL. How, you ask? In the Super Fight division, fighters are said to take away 50% of the pay-per-view revenue, with the bout rights distributed among DAZN and ESPN. Paul has also initiated endeavors to raise up to 8 figures in his Fighters Association with the agenda to fund fighters' salaries, so they're not bound by constraints set by the UFC. What's more, Jake has also used the boxing platform to raise awareness of bullying with his Boxing Bullies campaign, a body that has raised over $400,000 since its inception. Following up, who will coach Paul? Though the question still remains, will Jake Paul succeed in the cage? The journey starts with the camp. Jake needs a formidable team that helps him transition from using his fist to his entire body. MMA is way different from boxing. Some would argue that it requires more guts and physical attributes to succeed than its counterpart. Jake has expressed his desire to be coached by renowned coach Javier Mendez. When speaking to the Schmo, Mendez dismissed any contact from Jake's side to join the camp. Considering the alumni Mendez has garnered across his coaching years, it's not surprising that Jake wants to pursue him. Mendez has trained the likes of Daniel Cormier, Frank Shamrock, BJ Penn, and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now that is some class. If you think about it, Jake definitely has the conditioning and fighter mindset. It isn't hard to imagine him lighting up fighters with his strikes. Former UFC dual champion and Olympic gold medal wrestler Henry Cejudo suggested that Jake try MMA. When speaking to the Triple C and Schmo show, he said that the 25-year-old had more of a chance to wear gold around his waist in MMA than in boxing. He offered to take Jake under his wing and teach him takedown defense, clinch work, and other crafts MMA requires. Like many others, Cejudo was an avid passenger of the Jake Paul hates bandwagon. He claims that Jake's got his respect by doing more for boxing than anyone in recent times. Let's move on to Jake wins respect. With 6 boxing wins to his name, Jake's move to the PFL proved to be the most impactful W he has garnered for himself. For a YouTuber to come along and disrupt the entire fight game was a bitter pill to swallow for enthusiasts. Fans were pretty vocal in showing their opposition against Jake. That said, the reaction looked very different after Jake posted his video on his YouTube channel. Many fighters took to Twitter and acknowledged how fired Jake's announcement was. UFC middleweight Kyle Dawkins tweeted how it is getting complicated now to like the new head of fighter advocacy in the PFL. He admitted that the proposition could be tremendous for the business if they came through with their promises. Free agent Darren Wynn tweeted at Jake Paul with an open challenge to inaugurate his endeavors in the PFL. However, admitting his physical attributes would make it an easy W for PFL's new recruit. It was interesting to see how Jake took blatant digs at the UFC's knack for limiting fighters, calling them out over deciding what fighters should do, where, or promote. With the PFL Super Fight division, fighters will apparently get to negotiate their sponsorship deals while being 50% partners in the pay-per-view itself. Considering the level of attention and buys Jake will be bringing to the league, Dana White best be making some phone calls and making amends with some unhappy campers in the office. Looks like the paradigm is really about to shift. Finally, the Notorious response. Let's be honest, you can't discuss MMA without discussing the Notorious one. Conor McGregor tweeted at Jake Paul's acquisition, claiming that the 50% joint partnership was an empty deal, calling him a Wally Wally. Never changed, Conor. Conor's ego stems from his procreating some big money fights in the past, including a blockbuster 10-round fight against Floyd Money Mayweather, where he allegedly took home $130 million. On the other hand, Jake isn't a stranger to millions either. Jake's 2021 run made him around $45 million. Considering this was his first significant run in boxing, it only makes you think about what more we can expect from the problem child in the future. That's a wrap for this video. How do you think Jake will perform in MMA? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.